Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be going over one of the unique bows for the rogue, which is known as Eaglehorn. Eaglehorn is a bow that was introduced a while back, and it actually saw some changes. 1.20, which I believe is what we're on right now. Actually, this is 1.21, but they haven't made any changes to the unique items in 1.21. This particular bow has a very unique effect, and we'll be demonstrating that in a little bit. But let's go over the stats first, and we'll talk about it. So Eaglehorn is a bow that can drop Ancestral. I believe it can drop Sacred as well, but you'd probably want to get it in the Ancestral form since it is a weapon, and you want the highest item power that you can get because item power is equivalent to weapon damage, and obviously as your main weapon, you want it to be a higher one. It is a bow, so it does have 60% damage to distant enemies on there. It also comes with 5.4 to 15% critical strike chance, which is pretty nice. Mine is absolutely god-awful at 5.4. It has 37.5% vulnerable damage, which rolls from 37.5 to 58.5. And mine, again, is bottom roll, which is terrible. I need to get a better one. 34.5% physical damage, 31.5 to 52.5%, and then 55.5 damage percent to elites, which rolls from 49.5 to 70.5%. All around the mulberry bush, mine is a terrible one, isn't it? I need to get a better one. Speaking of which, you can actually get this from Beast in the Ice. Beast in the Ice has a special chance to drop Eaglehorn. I believe he's the only one. Let me double check. Yes, he's the only one. So Beast in the Ice is where you got to go if you want to try and get yourself an Eaglehorn. It also has a special effect. Now, the special effect is actually quite interesting. Penetrating shot has a 45% chance, and it does go all the way up to 80, which is pretty nice. Mine's just a terrible bow in general. And it has a chance to fire an arrow that bounces off walls and scenery, damaging 5 enemies with penetrating shot will cause the next cast to make enemies hit vulnerable for 3 seconds, so it's a free vulnerable. The bouncing is actually pretty cool. Let me see if I can go to a like a dungeon or something real quick, and I will see if I can show you how this works. So, I'm not sure. Do I got any? Nope, don't got any doodags. I need a dungeon that actually has walls, too, so we might have to cycle a couple dungeons real quick just to see what we can find. But let's go ahead and just do like 3 of these. And we got Whispering Vault. Oh, sounds good. Let's try this one. Now, when you fire Penetrating Shot is obviously your main core skill. And Penetrating Shot has, well, it's got some pretty decent damage. And if you're using the aspect that causes it to split, it also gets a really nice damage bonus, like because it splits between the targets. It's kind of hard to explain exactly, but basically when you hit somebody, 2 more shots fire outward like this from the shot that you originally shoot. Oh, gruesome. Oh, his wieners got ripped off. Who ripped off the guy's wiener? What the ham biscuit? Alright, so when you fire inside of an enclosed area like this, actually, I need a more enclosed area. I got something a little bit better than this. There we go. This is a little better. Alright, so when you fire inside of an enclosed area like this, there's a chance that it can bounce off the wall. And since mine is a really bad chance, it doesn't happen all the time. But as you can see, it can bounce back and forth. In tight corridors, it actually bounces back and forth quite a few times and does a pretty ridiculous amount of damage. The problem is that when you're out in the open and you're in like an area where it's not gonna bounce, it doesn't really do anything because obviously there's nothing for it to bounce off of. My one here personally though is absolutely terrible. It is just, I noticed that 45% is just not enough to get an accurate bounce off of anything. It really needs to be higher into the 80% area for you to really get the proper bounces. And if you're going to utilize it, you're going to obviously want the bounces because otherwise there's no other reason to use this bow with Penetrating Shot. You might as well go with a different bow and then put an actual aspect on there that you're actually going to get good use out of. I need to farm Beast in the Ice like 1,000 times so I can get myself a better version of this. But I could imagine, honestly, a more perfect version of this being kind of insane. A 925 with 15% crit chance is kind of insane. 58.5% vulnerable, 52.5% physical, 70.5% damage to elites, and then an 80% chance that your shot's just going to bounce around and hit targets like over and over and over again. It's a really nice bow, specifically for penetrating shot. My only real negative that I can give to this bow is that it's only for penetrating shot. I never really was one much for very specific uniques that do very specific things for very specific skills. And Eaglehorn is definitely one of those. It's only for penetrating shot. So if you're not a penetrating shot rogue, well, why are you going to use it? You're not. You're not going to use it. So in my particular case, because I am a penetrating shot rogue, I'm obviously using it. And as you can clearly see, I do some pretty boss damage with this particular build. Penetrating shot is a very good density clear tool, and in fact, the more monsters that you have in the vicinity, the higher the damage can be. And it gets kind of insane at a certain point where you can literally just get massive, ridiculous amounts of damage if you have a really large group of monsters. The main downside of penetrating shot, though, seems to be that it absolutely sucks at single target damage. It doesn't really do well at all for single target, and I'm not really sure why it's so bad at single target, but it's so good at AoE. I really wish they'd bump up the single target damage a little bit so it's a little more usable in that term. And because Eaglehorn is tied so specifically to the penetrating shot skill, it definitely makes for an interesting scenario where yes, you do have to worry about, hey, is this skill actually a good skill to use? It's not just a matter of, is this a good unique? Because that's not the question anymore. Now the question becomes, okay, well, this unique is tied specifically to this skill. Is this skill actually useful? Can I actually make a character with it? And that's the point at which you have to, go into the more specific things, which is, yes, penetrating shot is absolutely amazing for certain effects. Density clearing, as you can clearly see by my gameplay in the background, which I'm currently playing, is density clear is insane for this particular skill. But single target is terrible. And I think, honestly, you would need some other ability to get good single target. I think that's actually something that people usually do with this, is they run penetrating shot, and then they also have, like, for bosses, they'll switch out to something like, what was it? Rapid fire, which rapid fire is a little bit better when it comes to boss damage. And it's just because one is just really good at bosses and one is really good at friggin' AoE. So, unfortunately, it's very difficult to run 2 core skills on a character at any given time. You don't really have enough slots for it. I mean, it'd be fun if you could run 2 core skills, but... And I love the way this character freaking annihilates an entire room. It's just freaking... It's just glorious. And, of course, the bouncing penetrating shot helps with this. Because as the shot bounces around the room and dishes out more damage, it's just more effects, more, hits on the multiple monsters so that I'm dishing out more and more damage. I mean, it works out. And I think that Eaglehorn might be my best in slot. And I think that's one thing we do need to talk about as well, which is Eaglehorn the best in slot for a penetrating shot build? Now, what would you put in place of this? Well, because Eaglehorn is a two-handed item, there is an issue here revolving around the fact that, well, the two-handed aspects are your most powerful aspects. So you're giving up a very powerful two-handed aspect for the effect on the Eaglehorn, and the question then comes, well, does it actually balance it out? So is the effect that I'm getting from Eaglehorn actually going to be better than just simply rolling a really nice two-handed aspect in this place. Now, what aspect would you put on there? Well, depending on what kind of build you're running, there's quite a few different options. One such option would be to run Icy Alchemist Loop as your two-handed, so you could get more explosions. Another option would be to run the Corruption aspect on your two-hander, so you can get the increased multiplier versus monsters that are hit with the imbuement skills, and they're vulnerable. So as long as they're vulnerable, you get the multiplier. I do have that one on my amulet right now for the 1.5, but if I were to take off Eaglehorn, for instance, one thing I could do is I could run the Corruption on my bow, which would give me the higher multiplier versus vulnerable, and then I could run the Icy Alchemist loop on the amulet, or I could run the loop of elements on the amulet, something like that, or maybe even the penetrating shot, trick shot on the amulet. I would have more options at this point, is basically what I'm saying, and I still have to work out the math and figure it out for myself whether I actually want to run this on the penetrating shot build. And I think the really sad thing about this is that if it does turn out that Eaglehorn is less effective, for instance, than just simply running a nice two-handed aspect, well then Eaglehorn has kind of failed in the only thing that it was supposed to be good at, which is penetrating shot, right? Now, penetrating, the Eaglehorn does have some flavor text on here. It's, scholars have been unable to decipher the runes carved into this bow, however, all agree they are related to its uncanny ability to bend arrows toward their targets. Barrett's Book of Implements. I think that's pretty much it for the Eaglehorn. I've demonstrated at least how the bounces work. As always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.